The M5 iPad Pro is the perfect product in 2026 that illustrates what I call the Apple dilemma. A technically impressive piece of hardware, but kind of held back in a weird way. And after spending 6 months with one, I'll take you through why I think that, what stood out, the stuff I haven't used, downsides, and what I think Apple needs to do to truly make this a fantastic product. Let's start with the first highlight, the display. This iPad, unlike every other iPad in Apple's lineup, features an Ultra Retina XDR display. What is that exactly? Well, it uses a Tandem OLED panel, which basically stacks two OLED panels into one display to achieve better brightness and color than you would get with just a single OLED panel. And whether I'm looking at it doing everyday tasks or watching content on it, it just looks fantastic. And new with the M5, this display can drop to 1 nit of minimum brightness, making it even more comfortable to view in a dark room. This by far remains one of Apple's best displays in any product, and especially if you watch a lot of content on your iPad, this is a huge reason to go for the iPad Pro over the other models. Now, tied to that display is Apple's ProMotion technology. ProMotion lets Apple adjust the refresh rate up to 120 Hz, making motion and animations feel genuinely smooth. It's a technology that once you get used to it, you'll want it across all of your Apple devices. And I do think it's a bit silly that last year's iPhone 17 got this technology, but the iPad Pro remains the only iPad with it. The next highlight with the iPad Pro is that by going with it, you have the option to get the best Apple iPad accessories. Now, obviously, you still have to pay for them, and you will pay a lot. But the Magic Keyboard, with its aluminum construction, larger haptic trackpad, is the best keyboard for an iPad in Apple's lineup and my personal favorite to type on. And then there's the Apple Pencil Pro. This is the latest generation of Apple Pencil, which magnetically attaches and charges from your iPad. The Pencil Pro also gets you the squeeze gesture, which brings up a palette to easily switch tools, plus barrel roll, which is perfect for mimicking how you'd twist a real calligraphy pen or brush. This is the only Apple Pencil with Find My support, which is really helpful if this becomes dislodged from your iPad, so you'll know generally where the pencil was left. Though note, it doesn't have the exact precision finding feature that you might be accustomed to with AirTags, for example. And this pencil also has pressure sensitivity as well, unlike the USB-C Apple Pencil. For me, I use the Magic Keyboard way more than the Apple Pencil. But for the times I do want to use an Apple Pencil, I want to make sure it's always charged and ready to go. That's why I still recommend going with the Pencil Pro. The next highlight is actually weight. Even with this larger 13-inch size for the iPad Pro, it's about 35 grams lighter than the comparable Air in this size, and then the 11-inch size, that's about 15 grams lighter. And this current form factor for the larger iPad Pro is the first time that I found it not to be cumbersome to actually lounge with and read on thanks to that lighter weight. The next highlight is 5G Cellular. The iPad Pro, like the rest of Apple's lineup, has a 5G Cellular option, but this is actually the first time that I've actually gotten an iPad with that option. Having 5G Cellular on the iPad was just a lot more freeing than I was expecting. Now, yes, I could have just used a hotspot on my phone, but thanks to the built-in eSIM and my Google Fi plan, it just is way more frictionless. You can just take your iPad out and immediately you can start using it. The next big highlight with this iPad is iPadOS, and specifically two new features that help inch it closer to being a bit easier to multitask and work on like a Mac. First is the new windowing system, which lets you more easily overlap windows than before. Now, initially, I did find this implementation a bit confusing, especially because it is like macOS in certain ways, but then again, not. Unlike on Mac, where you can just drag windows over to the side of the screen to lock them into that split view, you need to actually hold down that little green part of the stoplight. And 6 months later, overall, I have gotten used to the way multitasking now works with the iPad Pro, and for what I use it for, which most of the time it's just in its keyboard configuration, it's been great for that. The other big new thing with iPadOS 26 that I've really liked is the background tasks, which lets you do things like download and copy files in the background. That's something that frankly should have been there years ago. Now, the other big benefit of iPadOS in general is how well it integrates with the rest of your Apple ecosystem. You can use Sidecar to run it alongside your Mac, take phone calls on it, check your messages, easily pair your AirPods, AirPlay audio to a nearby speaker or video to a nearby Apple TV, or copy a link on your iPhone and paste it on your iPad. Now, if the M5 iPad Pro has you thinking about leveling up your typing and note-taking setup, this video sponsor EIP offers a complete accessory ecosystem, starting with their HyperKeys keyboard. The exterior feel and key travel are very similar to Apple's own keyboard. One standout feature is the magnetic pen sleeve. It securely holds your Apple Pencil or Pencil X and lets you slide it right into place so it's not sliding around loose in your bag. The trackpad is full surface clickable, much more responsive than bottom corner only designs, and supports multi-gesture navigation, plus the wide key spacing ensures comfortable typing. With the EIP app, you can customize shortcut keys for specific apps or system shortcuts, and on iPadOS 26, you can even map a key to trigger text to Siri instantly. You can also adjust backlight settings and the auto sleep timer. Next is the Pencil X stylus, which works with the app and lets you adjust its signal strength to match different iPad models or screen protectors with customizable shortcuts and taillight effects. It charges in about 30 minutes via USB-C and includes a metal tip for added precision. The Nano 2 screen protector gives you a paper-like writing feel for a better iPad writing experience when you need it, and you can remove it and wash it when you don't. It's available in both anti-glare and anti-blue light versions. Check below for all of EIP's awesome accessories, and thanks to EIP for sponsoring this video. And then there's the M5 chip, plus a bunch of internal upgrades that come along with it, which makes it a little bit more of a meaningful upgrade than just the M5 name might suggest. For example, base RAM goes from 8 gig to 12 gig, memory bandwidth jumps to 153 gigabits per second, SS speed doubles, and you're also getting Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 6. And then there's the M5 chip itself, which does unlock some new functionality like being able to drive an external display like the new Studio Display XDR at 120 Hz, something my M1 Ultra Max Studio can't even do. But outside of gaming, running benchmarks on this thing, intensive graphics work, or on-device AI model applications, I doubt most people are actually going to notice much of a difference in day-to-day use with this new chip and this model of iPad compared to the previous generation. And a lot of that other stuff I rattled off, it's probably not going to make that much of a difference. Which brings me to what I haven't really used on this iPad over the past 6 months, and there are quite a few things worth calling out here. The first is note-taking. As someone who's spent years writing notes at work on an iPad display, over time, I just got tired of writing on glass, and I just found I much preferred the writing experience, either writing directly on paper or with an e-ink device like the remarkable Paper Pro. Now, while screen protectors can make writing on iPads feel more paper-like, you still get all the distractions that come with iPadOS, which you simply just don't get with plain pen and paper or a digital note taker like the Paper Pro. Speaking of which, if you want to hear more of my thoughts on the Paper Pro in particular, you can click here to get to my review of it. Another thing I always kind of forget is on the iPad Pro is the LiDAR sensor. There aren't many things I've found it useful for, but one thing that it is particularly good for is virtual furniture placement in your room. And then there are the Apple Intelligence features. Outside of priority notifications and notification summaries, I haven't really used this functionality. I don't care that much for the ChatGPT integration with Siri because Siri will often kick out to ChatGPT in situations where Siri should have just been able to give me an answer. Two other things I don't use my iPad for, and they're both related to my earlier comments on the M5 chip, are gaming and video editing. Now, if you're a mobile iPad gamer, I do think this device would be stellar for that use case between its display and graphics performance. Now, while yes, you can technically edit video on it via Final Cut Pro for iPad or other apps like DaVinci Resolve and CapCut, for my workflow, because I use plugins and honestly, I just find the Mac easier to do professional work on in general. Plus, Mac hardware can be a lot more powerful than the iPad, even the iPad with the M5 chip, especially when you're talking about large video exports. That's where you're still going to find me editing video. So what do I actually use my iPad for then, you might ask? Well, over 6 months, the main things I've been using it for are web browsing, content consumption, typing and writing on it, and using it as an on-the-go computer. The Apple Pencil actually makes it pretty versatile in that last role with the Magic Keyboard, especially for signing documents on the go. And this lines up with what a lot of our subscribers told me that they use theirs for. The exception being with many more of them that they use it for drawing and note-taking compared to what I use it for. Now let's get into the downsides, and the first one is battery standby. This is a broader problem with iPads in general because unless you leave your iPad plugged in all of the time, it's very likely that you're not going to use it every day, and when you want to come back and use it, it's going to be dead. Google actually solved this problem years ago with the Pixel tablet by creating a dock for it, so when it's not in active use, it just turns into a digital photo frame. I mean, I just find this design choice brilliant, and I'm genuinely dumbfounded that Apple just hasn't copied it. Now, maybe that's what their rumored home device will actually turn out to be, but it's crazy to me that there is no docks for iPads, especially the smaller mini, which would be the perfect size for an Apple digital photo frame. Now, the next downside goes deeper than just the hardware and gets to what I think is Apple's real dilemma with this product. For so long, the company has relied on App Store revenue as a growth engine, and now I think it's hampering more professional products like the iPad Pro. And one sign that people might be clamoring for a more open iPad is how many people are going absolutely nuts over the MacBook Neo. Now, I'm reviewing that product right now as well, and the wild thing is, this costs almost half of what my iPad Pro and all of its accessories costs, but in many ways, it is much more powerful because it runs macOS, not iPadOS. macOS gives you more flexibility to do more with things at the OS level, which is part of the reason so many tech reviewers and enthusiasts have just wanted Apple to let the iPad run macOS. And it clearly could. The MacBook Neo doesn't even have an M series chip, it just runs on an iPhone chip. But I'm not actually arguing that the iPad needs macOS. I think it's totally fine to let the iPad be the iPad, have its own OS that's developed around the specific needs of iPad users. What I am saying, though, is that the biggest reason I think people want macOS on an iPad is app distribution via the web, plus maybe root access to the OS and maybe a terminal app. Compared to macOS today, it's just nowhere near as open and flexible as I think people want it to be because of its great portability and form factor. And especially with the Pro moniker, I think the argument that this should be able to do more, not necessarily run macOS, but let you do more professional things on it, I do think that criticism is warranted, especially considering the price. And that price is my last downside. Now, depending on what you want to do with your iPad, you might just be much better off saving your money and spending it on a cheaper iPad. Or heck, get a cheaper iPad and a MacBook Neo, and that'll come up to the same price that you spend on an iPad Pro with all the accessories. And to see what all the iPads and tech I've talked about in this video are currently priced at, you can do that via the blog post linked in the description. There you'll find links to multiple retailers, and if you ever want to find deals on Apple products in general, just go to our shop page and search Apple deals or even iPad deals. So who is this iPad Pro actually for, and do I recommend it? This is an iPad for people who already have an iPad, use it a lot, and you want to upgrade to a nicer one. Or for those who want the most premium iPad experience, you want that excellent display, the thin design, M5 performance, and the ability to pair an iPad with Apple's best accessories. Now, if you already have an iPad, should you upgrade? Almost no one should unless you think you can genuinely benefit from the M5 chip if you already have an iPad Pro with the Tandem OLED display. Now, if you have a previous model or different iPad though, and if you watch a lot of content on it or write a lot on it, I do think that Tandem OLED and the Illumina Magic Keyboard are a lot nicer, and I personally prefer them to the iPad Air's equivalent experience. Speaking of which, should you get this iPad Pro or the iPad Air? They do actually have a lot of similarities, and I actually did a video on that exact topic, which you can get to by clicking here. For 6 months later, I'm Josh Tedder, and if you made it all the way to the end, let me know by commenting. Let us download apps from the web, you cowards. Thanks for watching.